Hey, Unicorn Nation, Max Finn here, your host for another episode of the Unicorn Perspective. Today's episode, Thomas Shipley, absolutely incredible leader, business owner, CEO, entrepreneur, a guy that's done so many amazing things in the ecom world, but really just in building businesses, right, in the world of entrepreneurs, and he's built a amazing kind of holding company, Atlantic Coast Brands, that owns all these amazing ecom properties like Karen Eek, and they're doing some really big numbers, right? A lot of people on Facebook talk about their drop shipping stores and how they're doing 10, 20, $50,000 a day. Thomas is doing big numbers. That I'll let him explain what they're doing and the results they're getting, the numbers, but total different level. They're in every type of channel. They're on every platform. They're in retail. They're on TV. They're in they're doing over the phone. They're doing that seen on TV. They're doing everything you could think of, every channel you could think of. And so I was so excited to sit down with them, and we get to chat a good amount because we're friends and we're in the same masterminds, and he's in our mastermind, and I always get to pick his brain a little bit. But it's amazing just the insight that he has from seeing so much marketing spend across so many different channels and different brands, different product categories, different price points, and over long time periods of time, right? Not just a few months or a few years. And so the insight he's able to provide is amazing. We dove really deep in this episode on kind of the future of ecom, what he's seeing trend wise, what's working for him right now, what's not working for him right now. And then we also talk about personal stuff, right? What does it take to be a successful entrepreneur? What does it take to be a successful marketer? What does it take to be a good person, right? And do things the right way. So a lot of great topics and amazing conversation. You're going to absolutely love this one. So stay tuned. This is going to be a good one. All right, Mr. Thomas Shipley, what's up, brother? How's it going?
It's great seeing you, Max. Doing overall well. These are insane, challenging times for a lot of people, and different people are experiencing the world differently right now. But overall, I'm an entrepreneur, so the glass is always half full. I'm always waiting for the other shoe to fall as an entrepreneur, but always optimistic about the future. And that's the way I have to live life, is you take it day by day, you enjoy what you can, and look for opportunities to really live life and have impact. So.
Yeah, it's amazing. I know we spent probably 15, 20 minutes just catching up before this, and it's great to hear that you're doing well. And especially being in Jersey, where my family's from, it's very different than the rest of the country. The Jersey, New York, that tri-state area has been hit really hard, and the restrictions are a lot more severe there. And it's good to hear at least things are starting to improve. It seems like both states have started to make a lot of progress. What I think's really interesting with your brands, when I really wanted to pick your brain today, and I think for anybody listening, it's going to get a lot of insight into this, is the kind of holding company that you have and the portfolio of brands that you have are so omni-channel, right? Most people I speak with, and most of my experience directly is online. It's Facebook ads, Instagram ads, Google ads, stuff like that. But you're seeing such a diverse sales channels. So it's omni-channel. So you have stuff in TV, you have physical retail, you have online, you have kind of the full gamut of marketing channels. And so I'm curious from your perspective, what you're seeing, right? Because I know all of us were seeing ecom. Ecom's booming and stuff, but you have all these other channels that you buy media on in large volumes. And I'm curious what's happening with physical retail, what's happening with TV, what's happening with these channels people aren't talking about as much right now.
Yeah, and let me also set the table is that I've been in multi-channel marketing and e-com for 20 years. I started buying ads on Google 20 years ago, and again, the world has changed a lot. But as much as the world changes, it really stays the same. I'm always looking for underpriced attention. Period. Where's the attention? Where it is, and where it's underpriced, because even if it's the audience is a little bit off, if the price is right, I can make any media channel work, and everything I'm looking at is yield. So that's the way I built my first business in Orlando, Florida, which was a multi-channel. It was e-com store. It was we had catalog. We were in Sky Mall. I had 14 pages in Sky Mall, and we did national print ads. But that was my foundation and I'm gonna say my building block. And then when we looked to disrupt the beauty business 15 years ago, no one was doing this and understood it and said the model just doesn't make sense. We said we're going to use consumer spending. We're using omni-channel marketing, or we said then multi-channel, to build iconic beauty brands. Says I'm going to let consumer spending fund my advertising. So I can't compete head to head when Procter and Gamble or L'Oreal wants to start a brand from scratch. They might budget $100 million to launching the brand and advertising. I've seen up to $200 million where they spray and pray. And it never
Yep.
made sense to us. Versus I can use consumer marketing, and then consumers are going to tell us what creative works, what messaging works, what channel works for them, and then we'll expand from there. And that's what we did with our first brand, hydroxytone. We started in print, in online and print advertising. From there we went to, and then we started scaling that, and then we went to print and direct mail, and then radio was a big channel. We were the third largest advertising for that brand in the United States on radio. Then we launched into TV, where we were also one of the top 15 advertisers in short form radio in the United States. But again, we've been leveraging that. And the biggest lesson that I learned over time is that eventually every channel, every offer, and even a product is going to burn out. And the question is can you constantly recreate and diversify? So going back to your question is we've always looked to diversify our business across different channels, and we're still doing that as far as where we're doubling down as far as investments in new online channels. And again, it's where I can buy that inexpensive attention. What we're finding right now in this environment is when the big brands pulled out, media became very, very efficient everywhere. So for me, it was was telling my team, I said, we're in a Cinderella economy. This happened to us in 2008. When all the big brands pulled out in 2008, it enabled us to grow a $30 million business to $100 million in 12 months. And why? We just had less competition. Media price went down. Yeah, conversion rate wasn't the same, but media rates came down so drastically. But that lasted a long time before the Estee Lauder, Procter & Gamble started really getting competitive and putting a lot of money back in the marketplace. And I did say when this thing happened, and suddenly Facebook, media rates dropped, 25%?
Massively.
And also, and also TV, the same thing happened across all our channels. Media became so inexpensive, and suddenly it was what I consider a Cinderella economy. And I said, I don't know, this might last for a week, could last for a month, could last for 6 months, I don't know. So we need to take advantage of it wherever we can. And that's essentially what we've done. And so TV has been fantastic, long-form TV, Facebook, Google, and then we also started testing in YouTube and really trying to expand our online platform, looking at native and other platforms. And from our third-party affiliate business, also, it became so efficient, and third-party email became incredibly effective. Open rates.
Yeah. It's amazing what happens when there is just a massive reduction in supply and a massive increase in demand, right? It's actually flip-flop, a massive decrease in demand and an increase in supply. Those prices drop so fast, and it's amazing with these auction-based platforms. You can find those inefficiencies pretty quickly and capitalize on them. I'm curious though, because you see these big brands and you're competing with these big brands, and you're also you're competing all over the place, but you see these big brands and you're growing, and you're becoming a pretty big threat. Like, you're not a small company anymore. You guys have big brands. Why are they pulling out and smaller brands and faster growing brands staying in? That's what I haven't been able to figure that out. Looking at what's happened the last few months, they have the same numbers that we have access to, right? So they're able to see CPMs drop, and they understand basic economics. It's curious to see why certain bigger brands decide, hey, we need to pull back ad spend because of uncertainty, and then kind of scrappier brands and brands that understand the dynamics are a little better are willing to invest and take bigger risks.
It's a great question. Now, just for perspective, is one of our brands, Keranique, it's a $70 million brand, and we have 10% of our business that is bricks and mortar. So again, and if you look, and from a profitability, it's even smaller part of our overall EBITDA number. So when this happened is, okay, we're just going to focus on direct response. Our except for drug, Rite Aid and CVS, of course, doors are open. Sales have been great through Rite Aid and CVS, but our Ulta sales went to online only, so they actually got cut down. There are a lot of brands that are primarily in retail. So when your retail doors are shut down and you're using your direct response, when you're using your spending, whether it's online or offline TV, to actually fuel your retail sales to cause sell-through. When your doors aren't open, you pull back on spend. The other thing that happened is people had significant supply chain issues. They couldn't get components, they couldn't get product, and therefore they were shut down. Or they pulled back drastically, knowing that if they kept on even online at the current pace, they'd run out of product. So what was the point? So they said, let's pull back and wait for this to change. The stores to open up. Let's wait till we get our product back again. And even on Amazon, we saw that with a lot of sellers. I mean, Amazon for us has been incredible. And the halo effect is still lasting for us. For the same thing, a lot of competitors couldn't get product.
Yeah, what's interesting, I was reading an article the other day, I think it was an Inc. or Business Insider, and it was about Airbnb. And basically the premise of the article was that bigger brands are making huge mistakes the last few months in terms of cutting their media spend because they're treating their marketing purely as a direct response tool, and they're forgetting about the brand awareness component of it, the brand loyalty component of it, the fact that, hey, in 3 months from now, 6 months from now, a year from now, like things are going to start going back to normal. Consumers are going to start buying stuff. And if you've been MIA for months and providing no messaging, it's going to be a lot harder. It's not like you can just, this idea, this concept that there's like a switch, right? That, hey, I can turn it off and then I can turn it back on and I'm just going to pick up where I left off, just isn't true, right? And so Airbnb, as the example, was, hey, they basically have gotten hammered the last 3 months because they changed their policies on deposits and getting refunds. They made all these terrible decisions, and they could have been running, pretty cheap advertising right now on Facebook and social media, even TV, basically saying, hey, we're here for our renters. We're here for our landlords. These are the things we're doing. It wouldn't drive sales, but it would help them continue to keep their brand equity high. Instead, they did the exact opposite. They stopped all their ad spend, and they let the consumers and the pissed off people drive the narrative. And now they're going to try to start things back up. And it's, you took a big hit, right? You took a really big hit in your media spend. And it's like looking at the numbers, right? So like as an example, with Spotify, when they did a deal with Rogan, right? So they did $100 million deal with Joe Rogan. That deal increased their stock price, I think 15% or something. And that was a, multi-billion-dollar increase in market cap for Spotify. So they paid Joe Rogan $100 million and they turned that into, $3 billion, right? It's kind of the same thing that happens with these brands not spending money on ads. It's like, hey, you might save $100 million. Maybe Airbnb saved $100 million or $50 million, whatever it might be. But what was the hit to their market cap, right? What was the hit to the value of the company? I would venture to say that it was greater than whenever they would have saved on cutting ad spend. And it's interesting that a lot of these brands don't understand that and don't get that on both ends of the spectrum. The smaller businesses, they really don't understand investing in brand. And then the bigger companies, they treat it a lot like a direct response tool, and they cut it back when things become uncertain instead of doubling down or tripling down. There's not really a question there, but just more so what your thoughts are on that. And if that's something you kind of agree with or disagree with.
Well, everyone has their own factors, and it's individual. If I know that my stock is being traded based off of my net income for the quarter, and what my revenue, my profit, my net income per share is, and suddenly I know that I can't sell, I can't fulfill my supply chain. Do we cut back and minimize the loss so my stock doesn't get hammered? So that's really the key question there. Smaller brands, they might not have any cash. I was talking to the private equity firm that owns one of the high-end retail chains in the northeastern area in the beauty space, and he said, I'm sitting with all my brands, and we're trying to do some cash flow forecast. He said, how can you cash flow forecast when your stores are shut down and you have no income? He said, I have all my boutique beauty brands. We invested into the hottest properties over the last 5 years, but all of them are very much retail centric. Also, they're shut down, and I'm asking all the CEOs to come up with it. So if they don't have cash to survive, I understand not investing what little money they have left. And again, and going to your private equity owner and saying, I need more money. Well, those are extremely costly things to do. So everyone has their different calculus on how they actually weather the storm and what they can do in order to grow through this and position them in a better way. There's a bigger question, which is in general, is the whole question of knee-jerk reactions. And especially when you say cut spending or anything you do from an online perspective in the ecosystem. Something I learned, I know we chatted about this, that before I started my first business, I moved to Israel for 5 years and I was in special forces there. And there, the first thing that we learned is, especially under pressure, especially in field or under fire, the last thing you do is a knee-jerk reaction. You want to be able to assess the information and based on the information at hand, do what you think is prudent. And because if you take too much of a knee-jerk reaction and react too strongly, you can get yourself killed and a lot of people killed around you. I'm going to say that what I've learned over and over again, as especially in media buying, when you see things media running hot, you're maximizing your cap, your CPOs are running high, you got to be very careful not to suddenly move things too quickly, because there are so many things that are interrelated in systems, and you never know of the unintended consequences of your move. Because unfortunately, I've made that mistake enough times to know what the impact can be. You know, you see your CPOs are running too high, say, let's cut back our cost per order, let's make some changes in the way we structure our accounts in Facebook. But then you have the overflow. What happens in Google? What happens to your phone leads, to your email leads? What happens across the way to overall the consumer experience? Your remarketing, your retargeting. So you have to be very, very careful about massive changes. And even right now, so we were extremely deliberate what changes we made coming into this. We took a quick wait and see. We didn't make, because the first 2 weeks when COVID hit, our sales actually took a hit.
Yep.
And then it quickly swung the other way, where April was 50% up over what the trailing 6-month average was. And over that average, May was up 250%. So again, great situation to be in, but first it took dip down, but we didn't take any knee-jerk reaction. We said, let's assess, look at the data, let's drill down, and then we'll make strategic decisions what to do, and we'll just move small moves, because I don't know the unintended consequences of these moves by taking drastic and overreacting. And a lot of brands don't do that and did not do that and are paying the price. On the same vein is, I don't know what your other e-com brands are saying, is that after Memorial Days, things shifted. Most every e-com brand that I know of, they said that same thing that was working in their favor. Now, things didn't go back to the pre-COVID phase, but things are absolutely not as, media is not as cheap, and they're not getting the same ROIs, and the volume is not the same as it was before Memorial Day. But the same thing is let's not overreact. Let's just make tweaks and move, and let's watch what happens with our ecosystem.
Yeah, I think what we're seeing, if you just kind of think through it logically, you have, this massive stimulus that happened, and it really funded the unemployment. And so you have a huge chunk of people that are employed, 40 million people, but a fairly large percent are and were still earning 1x their salary. And
Yeah.
a lot of individuals that were working in food services, hospitality, actually were making up to 2x. So actually double what they were making, and they're not working. So you have a lot of people for the first maybe 3 months are, okay, I don't have a job. I don't have, prospects, but I'm still making money. Money's coming in and stuff. I don't have anything to do, so I'm shopping. And so you have people still spending money because they saw money coming in. I think what you're seeing now is uncertainty, right? So, hey, the second stimulus, it's being held up. It's, it's not a guaranteed thing that unemployment will continue to be funded. There's not maybe going to be another check. Tax day is now coming up. It's, a month away, and people are running to the end of that 6-month window for unemployment. So I think you have that 40 million people now that are like, okay, the economy hasn't fully opened up yet. So my job's not locked back in. My money's going to start running out. So now it's buying, I think it's shifted a little more conservative when it comes to buying things online, at least for, certain products. There's obviously certain product categories that are still going to do really, really well. So at least that's what my thinking is behind it, is like we're getting to that tail end. And so we're seeing, just conversion rates continue to go down a little bit. Buyers get a little more conservative. And hopefully there's, I think we just got a great jobs number. So hopefully there's, people start to employ, more individuals. Again, jobs come back, but there's going to be, huge sectors of the economy that don't come back. My sister, she works for the Ritz-Carlton in DC, and she is one of their heads of their event department. And they do big business there. That's the hotel where a leader comes in, all the big global events, all the athletes, they might be closed until September now. They just get pushed back again and again and again. Like, is that industry even coming back, right? At least to the scale it was. So there's whole job categories that are either going to be significantly shrunk or might be non-existent for a while until there's some real solutions. And that drives buyers and consumers to save more, to spend less. And that's why we're seeing record saving rates, seeing all kinds of stuff indicating that.
You're 100% correct there, and I believe, again, there's not a lot of data. Of course, no one has data behind this.
Yep.
I believe until there is a vaccine as well out there and the economy, people start acting, can really behave like they used to. Though, let's be very clear, our world has changed forever.
Yep.
We will not go back into the same habits, same spending habits, and the way we lived in the roaring last decade. That's changed. However, to me, as we're a year away from going back to any type of normality, and there will be so many businesses that won't be able to weather the storm. They're just going to be gone. Small businesses, medium-sized, even large ones that are going to go bankrupt during this, and they can't do this. Now, as we see with every revolution like this, revolutionary period of time, there are some massive evolutions and changes, which will be good, and new business opportunities will be growing out of this. And I believe even in hotels, I think, and by the time we get to mid to the second half of 2022, I think people are going to be so tired of not traveling. I think it might be among the biggest traveling seasons if they come up with a vaccine and we know it's safe. I think in-person events are going to explode the latter half of next year. I know that, our traveling we're putting off to the latter half of next year also. And I just think in general that's what we're going to see. But here's the interesting thing about this time is, on the one hand, I cannot help but in life to have a lot of empathy for people. On the other hand is, this is the time, and maybe this goes back to my survival instincts from Special Forces, is that now's the time for the strong to grow and thrive and dominate. There are significant opportunities, and the question is do the entrepreneurs who own businesses understand the key points of leverage that allows them to drastically increase their profitability, increase their cash flow, because cash is king. If you have cash, you can keep on growing your business, as well as there are some incredible acquisition opportunities. Some of the greatest growth, and I'm going to say pivot points in my businesses over the last 20 years was done through acquisitions. And when I say acquisitions, don't fool yourself that you need any money to do an acquisition. You can acquire a business that is your size or 5 times your size with no money out of pocket, if you're smart and you know how to do that. And there'll be significant, it doesn't mean that the other person doesn't have a big payday or gets survival cash after what that they put in to build their businesses, but there will be a lot of opportunities to grow your business. It doesn't matter whether it's in product, ecom, or service such as agencies. And there are different reasons to acquire businesses. You can acquire businesses for their client base, for their customer base, for their profit contribution, for their talent. In the agency business, it's acqui-hire is a brilliant way to grow. Is you acquire talent, and if you have a great client base, you basically can charge more for the same amount of people, and you're growing your business. A buddy of mine at Canopy, Brian Burt, that's how he built his practice. Same thing, his agency, and they're in the ecom in the Amazon world, they're becoming the 1,000-pound gorilla because he's smartly been able to do that. And that's really the opportunities. But are we taking a step back as entrepreneurs, taking that breath, assessing the opportunities and saying, okay, 1 year from now, where do I want my business to be? What can I do in my business to the key points of leverage? What actions am I taking now that a year from now I'm going to look back and say that was the smartest thing I did in my business, both from increasing my profit and my size as a business, but also at the same time and what strategic niches do I want to get into, or what acquisitions can I do to drastically grow my business? So this is where I'm doubling down is, well, my core business is doing very well. I'm looking at different investment opportunities to build other businesses with the same strategy. Is that I know that giving people access to, I want to partner with business owners that are smart, that are hungry, that are aggressive, that have a good head on their shoulders, and help them take advantage of this environment to give them access to capital as well as strategy and tactics and network in order to take advantage of this. Because unfortunately, during difficult times like this, there are going to be the haves and the have-nots. But every entrepreneur has a decision to make. Which one do they want to be? A year from now, and 2 years from now, and 3 years from now, as they look back. And I don't care what the motivation is, whether it is to build wealth. I don't care what the motivation is to grow my team and the employees and the environment, or to leverage this to have impact. But the question is where do you want to be? Which camp? As you look back 3 years from now, are you going to be the ones who said, man, that was some of the smartest things I've done and the luckiest times I've had because I surrounded myself with the right people and I got into the right arena in order to take advantage of this? Or, wow, I should have. And I know from early career sitting there saying, I should have, I never want to be in the camp again. Smart strategy and massive imperfect action is what I see really the keys.
It's a great point going back to just your training and how you kind of started your career. It definitely does separate the super successful from everyone else. And it's something that I've noticed. If you look back at every major recession, pandemic, pullback, the wealth gap seems to increase at a greater percent each time one of those, like that's where there's those big jump ups. Because unfortunately what ends up happening is the masses, they act emotionally and they sell low and they buy high, right? And so when the stock market starts tanking in 2008, 2009, and when the market tanked, 2 months ago, 3 months ago, a lot of people sold. They panicked and they sold. And it's so irrational. It's not a logical decision, because if you look at, just the S&P over decades, it goes up, right? So you look at these days that go way down, but it's like if you stay in for a few months, because even if you just stayed in, I look at my SEP IRA, my investment accounts, like they looked terrible 2 months ago, right? They looked awful. It was brutal. But you just say, hey, I don't care. Like, I don't need the money tomorrow or next month or 3 months from now. So why do I care? Like, unless you desperately need the cash, it's irrelevant. You let it sit there, and now the Dow's up 900 points today, right? Things are getting back to normal. And so these are opportunities where you make investments, right? This is where you buy low and you sell high, right? You don't do the opposite of that. And I don't know how you're able to articulate and convey that message to everyday people. Like, that's something I struggle with. Is a lot of this stuff it's logical, right? It's so obvious, and it makes so much sense that, hey, like, you don't sell all your stocks when it's down 30%, right? You don't sell your home when its value tanks 30%, right? This is when you buy real estate. This is when you buy stocks. I don't know what the solution, and this is going down a totally different path, but just this is something that I've thought about a lot, is like, I feel education and knowledge is the most powerful thing. And there's so many people out there that just, if they had the right direction and they had the right information and they made just a few smarter moves, or limited the number of kind of illogical moves they made, they would be in a much better place financially. And it's challenging and it's frustrating because especially somebody that educates on the traffic side and the media buying side, I struggle with what is the best way to get that message to people, and instead of repeating the same pattern over and over and over again.
It's interesting. We all have different modalities of learning, and we have to understand what that is. There's so much I can learn from books. There's so much I can learn from podcast, from online research, but there's also from access to really smart people.
Yep.
And then there's actually rolling up your sleeve and doing it. So I'm I love to learn through immersion, through actually doing, and through being or surrounded by really smart people, either that I can hire that can work for me, or that I can hire as consultants or masterminds, which is the reason why I'm going to say one of the bigger mistakes I made early career is I didn't invest, I underinvested, and I invested in conferences, but not in actually mentorships, in mastermind groups. And over the last, I'm going to say the few $100,000 that I've invested over the last 5 years, the ROI that's from that has been massive. And again, it doesn't matter whether it's your mastermind, which is the opportunity to get to know you better and spend some time with you, was a no-brainer to do. But War Room, Russell Brunson's Inner Circle, the relationship that I built there, and that's just a few of the opportunities, has given me the network and the tools and the people that I want to be surrounded by for the next great opportunities that are out there. Again, the world is shifting, so you try to surround yourself with people on where you want to be and where you think the world is going to be. And understand that the way you're thinking is directly influenced by the people you surround yourself with. If you want to stay exactly where you are, then you surround yourself with people you're comfortable with. If you really want to move to the next level, you surround with yourself people that stretch you. And it's funny. There was a professor from MIT, Peter Senge. He wrote The Fifth Discipline. He talked about, as human beings, we're made, and our innate desire is to create. The problem with creation is it creates a lot of energy. And what happens, if you can imagine that there's a rubber band around my hands, and what happens is, as we create and we push ourselves in an uncomfortable environment, we have this tension, and this tension that it's tiring and exhausting. It pushes us and it stresses us. And the natural inclination of a lot of people is to say, okay, so maybe I won't set those goals that are so high. Maybe I'll reduce the pressure and I'll set my goals here and get to a level of comfort. The problem is that's not us at our best. We're meant to grow. We're meant to go to the next level. We're intended to be creative. And that's where we find our zones of genius. It's where we find ourselves the happiness when we're growing. And the challenge is to understand that there's a level of pressure and noise that you need to eliminate the negativity from your life. It is healthy to eliminate certain types of pressure and live in your zone of genius. But on the other hand, to understand that healthy type of creativity and goal setting that are just put the stretch and that pressure on you, just to get comfort. Put your shoulders down, be comfortable with that tension, and understand that's really healthy tension. So I love that philosophy that it goes back several decades when I had a chance to meet him, and he shared that philosophy. That's what I've struggled with over the years, and just got comfortable with that tension, understanding that as an entrepreneur, I love to create, and I don't want chaos creating that pressure, but growth to create it. And therefore, I choose to surround myself with people and opportunities that keep on stretching me.
It's powerful what you just said, and it's so true. Like the book that I'm just reading, I just finished a great book, which it's read it for the second time, which is Chris Voss's Never Split the Difference, and he has a great masterclass on masterclass, which is just awesome. But the book reading now, Black One Consulting Group, it's amazing. Is Jonah Berger's new book, The Catalyst, and it's amazing. It fits into what we just talked about, which is there's this thing that we as human beings have, like loss aversion, right? And it's an interesting phenomenon where it's, hey, if I flip a coin, and if it's heads, you get $100, and if it's tails, you lose $100. People are not going to take that bet. And even if you say, hey, if it's heads, you get $150, but if it's tails, you lose $100, and it's 50-50 probability, the smart decision is to take that bet, but the upside isn't greater enough to justify the potential loss. Like, we don't want to lose what we have, right? And so therefore the upside needs to be, I think the math is like 2.5 to 2.6 times greater, the perceived upside, for us to be willing to take that risk. And I think that's what happens with a lot of people, is you get to a place, like you said, where you're comfortable and you're good. Hey, yeah, you'd like to be doing better, or you'd like to have different things, whatever it might be, but it's work and it's change, and the inertia slowed down. So now you're not moving forward anymore. So it's a lot more effort. And it's like, is the effort worth the upside? And for a lot of people, they say, nah, it's too much, right? It's people get comfortable. That's why people don't upgrade their phones a lot. A lot of people, they stick to their phone for a few years until it's, so bad that the upside is now worth it, right? And that's Apple is great at doing that. They make each software iteration run a little worse on an older phone, so people get to a point where it's a planned obsolescence, where it's like, okay, I got to upgrade, right? And why the car companies, they make the original parts for older cars, they'll still make them, but they make them in smaller batches, so they're very hard to find. They're very expensive. So it's like, yeah, you keep repairing your car, but it's a pain in the ass and it's expensive. So get a new car. And it's challenging to train people or motivate people to want to push themselves past being comfortable and being good and being okay. Because for a lot of people, that's their point. That's kind of the off ramp for them, right? It's, I'm on the road. I want to get to a point where I make $100,000 a year. I have a house and have X, Y, and Z and have a boat or whatever it might be. And like I'm off and now I'm just coasting. It would be amazing to see what our world looked like if even like 5 to 10% more people didn't settle for good, right? Because that's what the Elon Musks and the Warren Buffetts and the Bill Gates of the world, like they could easily have stopped doing what they wanted. Like there's no reason for them to keep doing what they're doing, right? There's no reason for Elon Musk to have 3 different companies.
Elon Musk doubled down, take everything he had.
Yep, and put it in.
Double down on 3 companies that were totally speculative. He went all in.
Yep, all in. And he literally, he was on the verge of, if he didn't do that deal with Mercedes for the battery technology, like he would have lost everything. Like super wealthy. A billionaire, and would have lost everything. And that's just, for a lot of people, it's hard to understand. Like, why wouldn't you just stop, right? Like, why, when you have to PayPal, just buy an island and just live your life? Why would you try to go to space? And why would you try to colonize Mars? And why would you try to, have electric cars and all this stuff? And it's just fascinating for me. I'm always interested in like just human beings and how we can all be so similar day one, right? We all kind of come from the same place. We all have, the same 2 arms, 2 legs. We all have a brain. We got all these things, but like end up in such wildly different places. That there's Elon Musk's and there's Thomas Edison's, and then there's the rest of people who are just, I want to get to retirement. Like that's my goal is I'm going to work 9 to 5 for 5 days a week, and I'm going to do that for 45 years, and then I'm going to get my golden watch and my pension, and then I'm going to, sit on a dock for 20 years and enjoy the rest of my life. It fascinates me how human beings who start day one basically coming out of the hospital end up in wildly different places, and all the factors that drive that, right? Because there's just so much going on between then and then, that drives the destination.
It's interesting. We all have different motivations, and I'm gonna just go off into a tangent for a minute about just a philosophy. Okay, philosophy that I have in life. Okay. And this was shared with me, is that our life is this epic novel. It has the potential to be an epic novel. And each one there's different chapters. And the cool thing is that you always have a chance to write the next chapter as being epic. And to me, it's our responsibility to make each chapter epic in our life. And a chapter for me is anywhere from 5 years to 10 years. And to fill every page full of as much magic as possible. Now, I'm not going to judge what people have as far as their chapters. I just hope that people's chapters aren't full of, it was fine, it was nice, it's the worst expression in the world. How are things? Okay. What do you mean? What is the 1 in 400 trillion probability that you were born, that you actually evolved from amoeba to where you are right now? 1 in 400 trillion probability that you exist and in this environment, and you're going to be okay and fine. Now, someone who is making $40,000 household income and spends time with their kids and coaches their sports and has a day, but lives and enjoys every moment of it, to me, that's beautiful.
Yep.
and they're impacting the people around them. That's beautiful. So I'm not judging people as far as whether they're going for the brass ring or not, or the biggest level of impact in the world. Is everyone is going to write their own chapters differently. But the word fine and okay to me are horrible words, and no one should have a life that's fine, that's okay. It's what's magic, what actually drives you. And the thing that I hope people can realize is there are different points in your life that you can change anything, but it's a question is inertia works for us or against us, and how do you create that momentum? It's painful, just getting something from a position of rest to motion, Newton's law, right? Yep. So how do you actually create that inertia? But you can change, and you can rewrite your chapter, you can change your future and your destiny like this, but it starts with the desire and making the mental shifts, and then finding people that can help you with that is one of the key things here is and I hope that I see so many people right now, because of what the world has gone through between COVID and what the United States is going through right now in our straits. It is changing. It is making people rethink a lot of things, rethink priorities and what they want to be spending their time doing and who do they want to spend it with. And I hope that is one of the gifts to adversity that's going to come out of this 3 or 5 years from now. We look back and said, wow, what a horrible thing that happened, but look at the gifts that came out of that very difficult period of time. Because great things doesn't happen out of good times. They typically happen out of challenging times. So that's what I hope is going to happen. And people reassess and saying, I don't have to be stuck here with this fine and okay life. I can choose who are going to be my friends, who I spend time with. I can choose what I want to do every day. I can choose the impact I want to have on this world. I can choose it. I don't know how to change things, but I'm going to start making the time and changing things.
Yeah, you're totally right that it's, because again, it goes back to that inertia thing. It's when there's strife and there's negativity and there's pain, there's responses to those things, and then you solve those things, but you have the momentum going and you've achieved some goals and you've achieved success because you've helped, defeat a pandemic or defeat whatever it might be. World War II, like winning a war, right? You start with this horrible thing. The country comes together, everyone, starts contributing and doing what they can, and you win the war. And guess what? You're continuing that momentum. It's you don't just stop what you've been doing the last 3-4 years. You keep that thing going until eventually, things get too good, and then you get comfortable again, and you start, you forget the past. And I think it's as somebody that loves history, it is interesting how frequently we forget history, like major historical events, and we did something this way 35 times and got the same outcome, but we think it's going to be different this time, right? It just doesn't make much sense. But like back to what you were saying before, I think when you're talking about good lives versus great lives and people that are, happy versus not happy, I think the struggle is convincing people of the opportunity cost, right? Because it's hard to visualize that. It's easy to say, I have my life and I'm doing this, and these are the things that I have. And if I do this, I might lose these things. But what you're not thinking about is, well, if I don't do this, what am I potentially losing? Right? If I don't make this decision, if I don't try to start this business, if I don't do this job change, if I don't pursue this relationship, am I losing something? And I was thinking about this the other day of like, I've never met anybody in my life, I talk to my grandparents, stuff like that, people in their 60s, 70s, 80s that look back in their life and, say, I'm really glad that I settled. I'm really glad that I did this. It's the stories you always hear are, I had that idea. I had that idea for that product. I wish I pursued. There's always some levels of regret of, I wish I did this thing. I wish I did that thing because this person did that and that was my idea or my thing. And that's what's important. I think if you're thinking about making decisions of like, hey, I have the opportunity to go on this path where I can keep doing the same thing or take a risk over here, is not just thinking about what you can lose by taking this risk, but what you're losing by continuing on this path. And some of like the best marketers in history, especially like the political side, are able to instill that in people. So like Brexit, for example, that was one of the things they did with the movement was they said they had that red bus that drove around everywhere and it said, like take control, and they changed it to be, take back control. And that little
Yeah.
word there made a huge difference, because now people said, well, okay, well then we lost. We're taking back something that we already lost. So if we stay on the path, then we're staying with the path where we lost something. But if we go this path, we're taking back the thing that we lost. And it's amazing just how reframing a problem, and just the wording of something can change the way that somebody views their situation. But yeah, the opportunity cost one is fascinating, because there's always a trade-off. There's always something that you're losing by not doing something.
And what do you think people that you've met who'd said, "Oh, I think I should do this," but then they didn't? Why do you think they didn't?
I think a lot of it goes back to what we've been talking about the last 10 minutes, which is you're always making trade-offs of kind of risk reward, right? Every human being, every single day, we're doing hundreds of little calculations of what's the risk reward. Okay, I'm getting in the car and I'm on my phone. There's a risk reward trade off there. I'm getting in the car, put a seatbelt on, risk reward trade off. Hey, I'm gonna even just leave the house versus delivering food. Like there's all these little things that we're doing in our head. And I think for people that are not entrepreneurs to become entrepreneurs, every step along their life, it gets harder because the downside increases. That's why I was like, when I talk to kids in college and stuff, I'm like, this is the time to do something, because when you leave college and you get a job, now you risk losing that stability. And then when you get married, then you have a dependent, and then you have a kid, and then you have a house. Like each step along the way, you get a new kind of source of dependency that makes it that much harder to take a risk, because now I can lose all of this over here. That pie keeps increasing, and then the perceived upside of that risk doesn't really change. So it kind of stays the same for most people throughout time, but it's the other side that grows and grows and grows. And so for most like grandparents, people that that I've spoken to, that's usually where they were at. It's like they had kids by then. They had a wife or a husband, and it's, I had a good job. Like I couldn't take that risk, right? I couldn't make that decision. I also think it's getting easier. I think it's like my grandparents' generation, even my parents' generation, deciding to start a business was not nearly as obvious as a decision as it is today. And I think that spoils a lot of younger entrepreneurs, because when you want to start a business, even 10 years ago, you had to make some serious investments, both capital and time wise, right? You wanted to sell something, sell a product, you had to go find an actual location. You had to work with a realtor. You had to sign a lease. You had to get capital for that lease. You had to buy inventory. You had to hire people to work that store. You had to do all these things before you could turn the lights on and start making money. And nowadays it's, I want to sell a product. I can go on Shopify, create an account, link some apps to it, and I can be in business selling stuff without any real financial investment or commitment. Which is, I could go a whole tangent down that path. That's like why I think that's leading to such like a high failure rate in that world, because people aren't treating it like a real business, because the barriers entry are so low. I think like barriers entry are a good thing. I think you need to have some barriers, some challenges, so you actually take it a lot more seriously as an entrepreneur. Otherwise, it's like, if you're not putting 100% into it and you're not really investing into it, it's usually not going to work out that well.
It's really interesting. The power of going all in. One thing is leaning in, the other thing is going all in. And it was, I guess it was one of those lessons I learned going in the Army and not listening to people and going all in. The stats were interesting. It was a standing army of 260,000 people, and out of a population of 6 million. So here I was, a kid from United States. Yeah, I ran cross country, but I wasn't an athlete by San. And I had this in my head. I was going to go to Israel, participate in this young country, help defend the country, and I was going to join a special forces unit. And so the number was 10,000 out of the 200,000 try to get into, thought they could be good enough and try to get into my unit. Out of the 10,000 people that apply, they send you for test, physical and mental and technical test. And out of that, they picked, I think there were 2,000 of us that showed up for a one-day tryout. And then out of that, they picked 500 people to go through Hell Week. And so Hell Week is they try to break you, they try to get a read on you, how ethical you are, your judgment, your technical skills, your physical skills, and their goal during that week is to do everything they can to break you.
Yep.
Because what they need to do is they need to go from 500 people and pick 23 that they're going to invest a lot of money for an 18-month course. And then at the end of that period of time, and meanwhile, all along the way when I said this is what I'm going to do you know what the average person told me? You know what almost everyone told me? You'll never make it. You can't do it. It's never going to happen. The odds are so much. You don't even speak the language that well. You barely speak a few words in it. It is impossible. And meanwhile, I was one of those 23, and 18 months later, I was one of the 13 people that were left standing. I learned the definition of going all in and ignoring what being a realist is about. And a lot of people want change, but they listen to the voices around them saying, be a realist. What's going to happen? You're not going to make it. And sometimes you would have to defy it. And I remember the feeling when I actually, and it was another lesson, which is about manifesting your reality. Natasha, who wrote Unstoppable, she talks about if you write, when she has a goal and a big goal, she writes it on a piece of paper and puts it aside. And then the micro decisions that happen, 60,000 decisions that happen in our mind and thoughts, eventually lead you in that direction to what you want to do. But in my mind, it was about, as entrepreneurs, we have this vision. If you can create this big, bold vision, and if you can see it and realize it, and then live in order to actually be there and accept it, that's where you're going to get to, it is incredible what we can achieve. And the first time in my life, I picked an impossible goal, but I envisioned, and not for a second did I think I wasn't going to make it. Yeah, the odds were really against me. And clearly, I was never going to break. I was never going to stop. No matter how much weight they put on my back, no matter how many hours they kept us up nonstop, nothing. It never occurred to my mind I was actually going to stop. If my legs broke, that would be one thing. But I was going to stop. But it was the first example of the impossible is possible if you have your goal and you really envision it and you don't listen to the voices. One of the challenges that we have in life is it is so easy for us to listen to the negative voices. It could be our spouses. It could be our family. It could be our friends. It could be coworkers. It could be someone, a banker, or anyone, or your board of advisors that tell you it's impossible, give it up. And that ability to turn things off and have the confidence of just trust yourself. And I think just be able to listen to those positive voices and shut off the negative is one of the most important things we need to in order to create the momentum and create those massive changes. And how do we get that fortitude? And to me, it's a head game. It's mindset. I hate to say make it so trivial. I'm a number guy. I'm a quant guy. I'm a strategy guy. I'm a leverage guy. But ultimately, when it comes down to it, it's mindset.
It's totally mindset. And yeah, I struggle with that too, because there's certain things in what we do that can't be rationalized and can't be put into a formula, right? And so it's hard to teach people. It's like, well, how do you do that? So I can't necessarily teach it to you because I can't put it down on a Google sheet and I can't take you through step by step. There's certain elements of being an entrepreneur that are gut, that are mindset, that are instincts that are developed over a long period of time of doing and failing and experiencing what what you know is right, what you know is wrong, where you fail, where you succeed, and putting that all together and coming out with something that works for you going forward. But it is interesting. You said, the all in thing. It's so true. There was an interview that Adam Levine did with Howard Stern a few years ago. And it always stuck with me. And I've talked about it a few times because it's so impactful. Howard asked him, he said, well, how many of your buddies, like your music buddies, actually made it, right? And he said, all of my friends that gave 100%, that went all in on being a professional musician, they all made it eventually. He said, all my friends that were half in, half out, so they kept a 9-to-5 job and they had a fallback, none of them made it. So he said, that was the thing. If you have that safety net, if you're half in, half out, you can't give it the level of effort and dedication that's required to make it, because the odds are already stacked against you, right? The odds of actually building something that lasts the first year, let alone 5-10 years, is already, you're talking a very, very small percentage. And so you're competing against people that are all in. And so if you're just, hey, I'm going to do this, at nights 2 times a week. It's like, well, you're not putting the effort, the time in. And also, are you truly passionate about it? Right. Because if you really believe in something, if you're really that passionate about something, you can't possibly just put it into like that small bucket of time where, hey, this is what I believe in. This is my passion. This is what I want to do. But I'm going to work on it, Tuesday and Thursday nights for 2 hours. Like if that's something you truly believe that you need to do, like you're going to do it. And there's nothing that's going to stop you from doing it. And unfortunately,
Yeah.
there's not enough people that, that follow through with that, right? A lot of people can say they want to do that, but it's that I'm going to do it, right? It's such a small percent. And it's sad because there's a lot of people that I'm sure have passions and desires and they're probably really smart and they probably could do some amazing things, but
Yeah.
we'll never know because they never are willing to take that big step.
Now, what's really interesting is that I believe in having that clear vision where you're going to get to, but what you have to be very careful of is picking the path to get there and being, I'm going to say, white knuckling it. That's the path I said I'm going to take, and no matter what happens, I'm going to be Lieutenant Dan in Forrest Gump on that boat. Is that all you got? And keep on going with that one path, because that path may be not the right path. I don't know if you read U Squared by Price Pritchett, I think it was, where he tells a story, and it's just a brilliant visual analogy about if you ever seen a fly get into a house. It came in from an open door and suddenly flies in the open door and it goes and it sees the light in the window and it starts trying to get out through that open window and it bangs against the glass. And you see that fly banging against the glass over and over again. And pretty soon it gets exhausted and then drops and then tries again, and pretty soon eventually it dies. When all the fly had to do was to back up, see that there was an opening in the door, and go out the door it came into. But it's so focused on it. And I'm going to say in life, a lot of times the answers are right there if you just look. It'll get you to the same destination. I'm going to say that when I had my multi-brand business in Orlando, I'm going to say that we went through a really challenging time. And I think the period of times where we got through those is when we took a step back and looked for those not obvious opportunities. And I'm going to say if there's anything that I regret is one of my businesses that was an incremental revenue source that we had the business, which was nice. But looking at it back, my knowledge now knowing that was the biggest moneymaker, and we looked at it in the wrong way. And all we had to do is just to do a slight pivot. And that's where it would have turned into exponential growth for the business and a different destiny for the business and a different valuation upon sale if we would just realize the opportunities. And whenever I'm in a challenging situation, I always scan and say, let's go through every possibility and try to look at things that may not be obvious that might be the solution, because a lot of times the solution's right there. You're just so myopically focused and white knuckling on the plan that you came up with. So that destination is the most important thing. The path, you have to be willing to pivot and be the king of the pivot.
Yeah, pivoting is absolutely critical. So how is that? And I know we're running short on time, but how has that impacted how you've built Atlantic Brands and how you built Karanique and all the companies you have now? So you said, hey, I did this with my first company, and I didn't see the writing on the wall. I didn't see the pivot there. How has that played into the success with the current brand?
Well, I'm going to say this, that it's not always like, you don't hit something great. Like in 2010, 2008, we knew that we had a big brand, hydroxytone, 100 million a year. That's great. But we knew that skincare is very, very competitive. And eventually we didn't have that much of an edge. And we were clearly not a category king. So we were looking for what is that great opportunity. And that's when we were looking for this blue ocean. We didn't want to live in the red ocean. We were skincare where a lot of just competition, blood in the water, sharks. We were looking for that blue ocean where you can become a category king. And because my mom had problems, my sister had problems with their hair regrowing and hair loss, I went, aha, we did our research and we identified a place where no one else was, women's hair loss, and there was no brand back there for women's hair loss. And that was the great opportunity. But just because, and we launched it, it was a home run everywhere. We started in Google and paid social. And again, there's a number of different channels and radio and TV, and everywhere it just was a home run that we launched it. And even we launched in radio and HSN. But it was never, no business is ever going to be like this, especially over a decade. You are going to absolutely hit concrete walls. And you always have to try to build a business to prepare for those concrete walls, or two or three of them. And so along the way, when we hit those concrete walls and we did not have an obvious solution, sitting back and saying, okay, how do we pivot the business? Because especially, as I said, our biggest channels at one time was print advertising. We don't do any print advertising. That big channel is gone. Our biggest channel at one time was radio. We do no radio advertising now. Shore 14 TV was our biggest. Now it's a small channel for us. Again, the same thing. So, and when the things happen, you might not have somewhere to go to. That's an obvious where you can just pivot the business. So just being open for that and saying, what can we invest in? And a year ago, it was pivoting from having online as a 50-50 part of our business to saying, okay, it's digital first. Everything we're thinking about right now is digital first, everything offline, and our retail, everything else is going to be supportive. But digital first in our strategy, just like mobile first took our philosophy 3 or 4 years ago. We designed websites. I don't want to even see a desktop until the last moment. All I want to see is mobile. The same thing is digital first strategy. And having that pivot of strategy is what's key to allow us to not only survive, but also thrive. Always being ready to have that pivot. What is the big pivot?
Love that. I think that is about as good as a concept can be to end on and close on a high note there. It's always a blast getting to chat with you, and you just have so much experience and such an abundance of knowledge that you want to share, which I always enjoy whenever we get to spend time together. I always learn stuff, and I'm sure everyone listening is learning a ton from you as well.
Well, Max, let me say this, is that the fact and the gift that you have is you have your businesses that are very successful and your agency, and you're constantly a student, which is, I value and appreciate how much time you spend learning about your craft and also about the world, which makes you even as incredible human being that you are, but also the time that you take to share the information for free, which helps so many individuals, whether they're business or individuals, just speaks to the quality of your character. Because ultimately in life, I want to surround myself with people with the highest level of character, because that's what it's all about. I appreciate you, Max.
Couldn't agree more. Thank you so much. Stay safe up there in New Jersey, and we'll have you on soon again. Awesome.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone. Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode. I know I have a blast with all these episodes. This is something I really have fun doing. This is a passion project for me. There's no real big agenda here, but I've been getting a lot of requests from people that listen to the show, that watch it, wherever they're watching it, for how they can learn more, how they can get into the community, the unicorn community. So I wanted to record this little outro just as a way to tell you more about how you can get deeper into our community, learn more, engage more, build deeper relationships, and all that good stuff. But first, if you enjoy these episodes, wherever you're watching, if you're watching it on Facebook, YouTube, if you're listening on Spotify or iTunes, make sure wherever you are, if you like this, give it 5 stars, give it a thumbs up, give it that like button, wherever you are, right? It's going to be different wherever you are. Write a review, and make sure you subscribe so you get the latest episode that drops every week on Thursday. Now, if you want to join our free Facebook group, it's growing like crazy. We now have over 23,000 people in that group. Just go to Facebook and search Marketing Strategies for Business Leaders. That's our free Facebook group. Amazing content in there. We're starting to really build it up and do some cool stuff there. If you want to go further, if you want to invest in yourself, if you want to be part of our kind of premium program, specifically to learn advanced cutting edge paid traffic skills, be able to ask me questions on a weekly basis, be able to have me personally review your ads, your funnels, your landing pages, all that good stuff, go to Paid Traffic Training, all one word, paidtraffictraining.com. You'll be able to learn all about that program. It's a monthly program, gives you access to both my Facebook courses, private Facebook group, and again, we do weekly calls where I do a 90-minute call with our students, and they can ask me anything. I share the latest and greatest stuff. I can review, ads and funnels and all that good stuff. I do audits, Q&As, amazing stuff, and that's just $97 a month. It's month to month, no long-term commitment. So if you want to be part of that, paidtraffictraining.com. If you don't, but you want to just be part of our group, go to Marketing Strategies for Business Leaders. That's on Facebook. Just search that. Join our free Facebook group and join the unicorn community. And remember, give it 5 stars, hit that like button, hit the subscribe